O hadst thou, cruel, been content to see his hairs less in sight, or any hairs but these. Hello and welcome back to Nibblepop. This is Monami Mukherjee and we are doing this series on the Rape of the Lock. I have already done the first 3 cantos and I was kind of thinking that maybe you won't be needing the 4th or the 5th cantos because most universities they prescribe only the first 3 cantos. But I am overwhelmed by so many requests. Many of you have sent me private messages requesting me to make a video on the 4th and the 5th canto as well, and it was hard to ignore them. So here we are taking this up again, and in today's video and in the video that we will be posting next week, we will be dealing with the rest of the cantos, the 4th and the 5th cantos of the Rape of the Lock. Thank you for your requests because that has motivated me to do this video. And I'm sure you have all subscribed to my channel by now because only then you will get notified in time which videos we are uploading. I thank you all for being with us and I welcome you all again. The whole point of writing The Rape of the Lock was to make fun of something. And this whole process of making fun was done under the guise of something very serious, like imitating the style of epic poetry. One of the conventions which we find in epic poems is there's a point when the epic hero travels underworld, to some distant place, which is usually a dark, gloomy place, full of dangers and surprising things. He gets shocked by weird creatures, sometimes giants, sometimes a lot of dangerous incidents happen. And that epic hero, he manages, I'm using the expression he here because usually we find epic heroes to be male figures. So we are still to get women epic heroes as such. So these epic heroes, they travel underworld, they come across these dangerous places, they encounter dangerous animals and giants and other stuff. Somehow they return gaining some kind of awareness and some kind of strength to overcome their enemies who are there on the earth. So it's like delving deep into the earth to gain some power back to fight your enemies. In the 4th canto, we will see that there is a journey to the underworld. Why am I saying a journey to the underworld and not hero's journey to the underworld is because it's not the hero's journey to the underworld. Let's jump into the text to find out more about who is going where and what is the consequence of that journey. All right. Canto 4 begins with the lines, "But anxious cares the pensive nymph oppressed." Now, I'm sure you have already watched the first 3 videos that I've made and you know what has happened. Belinda, she's dressed up and she goes out to a party, to have some fun with her friends, and one of her companions, that is the Brabourne, he snips off one of her locks. He wanted to, make fun of her or belittle her in some way. And the way it is shown, it is as if to possess those locks, as if those locks are very precious. And the Brabourne wants to show off to the world that I possess the beautiful lock of Belinda. So that was the, you can say, scene which we find in the first 3 cantos. In the 4th canto, we will see how this whole thing affects Belinda. So the nymph, that is Belinda, she is very pensive. Pensive means she is very melancholic, she is very depressed. Of course she is. Her hair is being snipped off. And she is full of anxious cares. Cares means full of worries. She's worrying a lot and she's feeling oppressed. And secret passions labored in her breast. She's having all kinds of emotions and even confusing emotions because she doesn't know how to process this loss. How to process the loss of her hair. And then Pope gives us a list of the things or the situations where people got depressed, people got sad, and then tries to compare them to the situation of Belinda. Okay, so he gives the list here. Not youthful kings in battle seized alive. So when kings lost in battles and were captured alive, of course they were very pensive, they were very sad, and not just sad, they were worried. So he is giving us a situation here. Not scornful virgins who their charms survive. Now, the virgins, that is somebody who never had any relationship with a man, they get old. Okay, so apparently their youthful beauty is gone. Okay, so now if you call youthful beauty charm, this means that these virgins, these women, they survive their charm, which means their charm is dead, their beauty is dead, but they are still living. And that is a very painful state, according to Pope. And that's, of course, it's making fun. And he is therefore listing down a king who has lost in battle and is captured by his enemy. His sorrow, his pain is put in the same list where the pain of a woman, who has become now an old hag, that is put on the same plane here. Not ardent lovers robbed of all their bliss, not ancient ladies when refused a kiss. Come on, you cannot compare the kind of misery that a king faces when he has lost a battle and is captured with the kind of misery a woman faces, old woman faces when somebody refuses to kiss her. They are two different things altogether, but Pope is then bringing them all together in front of us. Not tyrants' fears that unrepenting die. Now something very serious is mentioned, okay, tyrants and death of tyrants. Not Cynthia when her manto's pinned awry. Manto is a kind of a dress, and Cynthia is like a common name for a fashionable woman. She is very distressed, Cynthia, when her dress is not pleated in the right way. It's awry, so it's not in the proper proportion or something. And this whole collection of miseries that we have here, they do not have any parity. I mean, they are all so very different in degrees, but they are listed together. And then finally, Pope says that the kind of misery that Belinda is facing now is, above all these things. Okay, so she is again above all these sorrows that people feel. Ever felt such rage, resentment, and despair as thou, sad virgin, for thy ravished hair? Now, associating the word ravishing with cutting off of somebody's hair is not very normal. We do not speak in that way. Okay, and the moment this word is used, of course, the title of the poem is The Rape of the Lock. So the word ravish has its associations with the word rape. This word gives a kind of seriousness to this event, which this event does not have in reality. And from a different perspective, this adds a kind of dimension to the way in which the Baron is actually treating Belinda. That cutting off of her hair is not just about taking away her physical beauty in any way. It is actually damaging the way she sees herself as a woman, and therefore it is equivalent to rape. Okay, that is again a very far-fetched way to put it. For that sad moment when the sylphs withdrew. Now, who were the sylphs? The sylphs were the supernatural beings who used to take care of Belinda. They were supposed to protect her, and we saw that they did not protect her when she needed them the most. And why did that happen? Because Ariel, the chief sylph, Ariel noticed that Belinda was having some desire for some youth, which might be that Baron, we don't know that for sure, but there was this picture of that youth in her heart, which made Ariel feel that she loses the claim to the protection of the sylphs, and therefore they all withdraw. And once they withdrew, her protection was off, and the Baron could easily snip off her lock. So that moment when the sylphs withdrew and Ariel weeping from Belinda flew, Umbriel, a dusky melancholy sprite, as ever sullied the fair face of light, down to the central earth his proper scene, repaired to search the gloomy cave of spleen. Here we encountered this person or this gnome who is also a spirit called Umbriel. Umbriel, he belongs to the world of earth and he wanted to play some tricks on Belinda. He decides to go and visit the Cave of Spleen, which is the equivalent of the Homeric underworld. The central earth is called his proper scene because being a gnome, he is associated with the element of earth. Okay, so those four categories you should remember. What happens after he goes through that journey to the underworld? Swift on his sooty pinions. Now, sylphs are good creatures, so their wings are white as snow and of rainbow colored, right? But since Umbriel is a mischievous creature, a spiteful creature, therefore his wings are sooty, black, because in conventional terms, black is associated with something which is evil, which is mischievous, which is dark, not divine. Okay, so Umbriel is, it belongs to the darker side of things. So Umbriel's pinions or his feathers, his wings, they are all sooty black. And in a vapor reached the dismal dome. No cheerful breeze this sullen region knows. There is no happiness in the cave of spleen. The dreaded east is all the wind that blows. In London, the wind which blows from the east is a bitter one, and usually it is not a very happy thing to experience. Here in the Cave of Spleen, no other wind blows except the east wind. Here in a grotto, sheltered close from air and screened in shades from day's detested glare, she sighs forever on her pensive bed. She here means the Queen of Spleen, and this place where she is sitting is sheltered from the air. Like there is this eastern wind blowing all the time, but Spleen is sitting on a throne-like structure in a place which is shielded from that air, from that wind, and it is also shaded. It's like it doesn't have the sunlight. And how is sunlight described here? Day's detested glare. Now I'll come to that, why spleen as an organ is associated with all these kinds of things here, but let's focus on the word day's detested glare first. Usually sunshine is a mood elevator. So in this cave, the queen is sitting at a place where the sunlight does not enter. Therefore, we can say that this person who rules this cave is somebody who is in a perpetual bad mood. Okay. Now let's come to the word spleen. Spleen is an organ. It's like liver, heart, kidney, like it's an organ. But here, during the time when Pope was writing, it was believed that spleen was responsible for our mood swings. Any disorder of the spleen led to hormonal disturbances, sometimes sexual disturbances and dysfunctionings, and somehow it affected women more. So this was the conventional idea. Okay. And it was believed that the spleen, it sends vapors to the brain and the brain dysfunctions in a way and women tend to be hysteric. So all these ideas about madness, okay, especially about depression, different kinds of mania, all these things were rooted in this idea of the spleen being the culprit. Therefore, the Cave of Spleen is, you can say, the metaphoric location of melancholy, of distorted idea about the world, of dysfunction of not just body but of the mind, dysfunction of desires. Okay, so spleen is the center of dysfunctionality, especially related to women. Okay, now we'll come back to the description here. Spleen is sitting and she's sighing and she's very depressed. Of course she is the queen of spleen. She sighs forever on her pensive bed, pain at her side and megrim at her head. Now, when she is on her throne or her pensive bed, spleen is personified, of course. And we also see two figures, one at her head and one beside her. The person at her side is pain personified. When you show any abstract quality or any abstract thing as a person, it's called personification. And here we see pain personified as a woman, of course, who is at her side. And megrim is another, you would say, it's a word for migraine, headache. Migraine is standing near the head. Migraine should, of course, stand near the head. But why pain at the side? Because again, most pains were related to the pain of the abdomen, of the sides. So this is what it is here. Two handmaids wait the throne. Handmaids means women servants, okay, slaves, alike in place but differing far in figure and in face. So first we see spleen with pain and megrim. Then we see two handmaids. Okay, so try to remember the different kinds of characters that are described in this cave. So these two handmaids, the first one is ill nature. Here stood ill nature like an ancient maid, her wrinkled form in black and white arrayed. It is again conventionally believed that the older women grow, they become more ill-natured because when their youth is gone, their hormones don't work anymore and they get very pissed at the world all the time, especially when they don't have a male companion. That is usually believed, at least in the time of Pope it was so. So ill nature is, of course, standing there, a woman, an aged woman, and she is all dressed in black and white. There is no color in her life. With store of prayers for mornings, nights and noons, her hand is filled, her bosom with lampoons. So she is holding prayer books. That is for showing off how religious she is. She's an old woman. But inside her heart, she has curses and she has banterings for people. She uses satirical attack on people. That is lampoon. Okay, so there's a difference between what she appears to be and what she is really, because that is what ill nature is all about. Who is the fourth person then? First is pain, then we have megrim, then we have ill nature, and now affectation. Affectation means when you pretend to be something, you put on some additional accent to your language, you behave in a certain artificial way. That is called affectation. Affectation with a sickly mien shows in her cheek the roses of 18, practiced to lisp and hang the head aside. So what are the things women used to do to show off something which they were not? It's like a game of pretense. They used to put on those artificial colors to appear youthful, and then they practice to lisp, because when you speak in proper erudite way, then you are not feminine, and if you are kind of very coy and you don't know what you're talking about, then you would be considered to be feminine and people would really demand your companionship. So these women who were affected by affectation, they used to put on this additional artificial air that I am a woman, I don't have any fixed sharp way of talking, I always lisp and hang the head aside. So they give off this air of very insecure and somebody who needs to be protected, so that men become very interested in them. Okay, that is affectation. Faints into airs and languishes with pride. So there's a lot of falsity in the way these women present themselves. On the rich quilt sinks with becoming woo, and what do these women do who want to gain attention of men? They often fall sick. Okay. Wrapped in a gown for sickness and for show. Now, when you are sick and at home, you're not wearing your best dress. But for these women, when they buy even a night suit, they need to show that off. And how do you show that off when you have bought something which you wear privately? Well, when you are sick, you are laying on your bed, then people come and pay a visit to you, and then they can see that nightgown. So, to show off their nightgown, they fall sick. Now, Pope is, of course, like stretching things too far, but how can you have humor if you don't stretch things far? That is his idea here, at least. The fair ones feel such maladies as these. Maladies means sickness. So, this is very common sickness that they have. What sickness? When each new night dress gives a new disease. Every time they buy a new night dress, they have to fall sick. Otherwise, how can people come and see that night dress? It will be all in vain. Now, we might think that, oh, women, those days, they were so vain, they were so stupid. But think about it in this way, when you take a selfie every time you wear something new, you feel that you need to show that to your friends. You feel that it is not being vain. I am being myself because I am showing the world what I am. Fine. But this whole idea that unless and until someone else sees what I'm doing, what I'm wearing, what I'm eating, nowadays we show people what we eat for dinner. And for Christ's sake, this is like a nightmare when I see people showing off their whole routine on Facebook. And this all comes from a strange kind of insecurity, perhaps, and a strange kind of loneliness. Because when you don't have close people around you, people whom you can trust on a daily basis, who give you that kind of companionship, then you need that recognition from the whole world. I need to show myself. If I have a new nightgown, the world has to know. And that tendency still exists. And that is the beauty of Pope's poem. It will make you look at yourself over again. That am I doing something like this? Then okay, then maybe I am suffering from this malady of affectation. Now, more descriptions follow. A constant vapor over the palace flies. Strange phantoms rising as the mists arise. Dreadful as hermits' dreams in haunted shades, or bright as visions of expiring maids. The way in which the descriptions are given, the language gives off a sense of grandeur, okay, as if you are describing something grand. But what is described here? Hermits' dreams. Now, when you talk about hermits in context of 18th century, and when you talk about hermits in context of 19th century, the two concepts are different. Why? Because in 18th century, the neoclassical age, it was believed that the hermit was a person who had no idea about the beauty of civilization, who was away from the society and its delicate states, and therefore a hermit is kind of dumb in a way. As opposed to this, as diametrically opposed to this, came Rousseau's view about the noble savage, where he is talking about the hermit as the wisest person or wiser than anybody who lives in a civilized world. But the hermit mentioned here is mentioned by not a romantic person, but a neoclassical person. So when, last day I was doing Wordsworth with you all. In Tintern Abbey, there is this expression, hermit sits alone. When Wordsworth is using the word hermit, it is an expression of awe, somebody who is wise. And when Pope uses hermit, it's like a stupid person's daydream kind of a thing. Somebody who sits among the rocks in a forest, has no clue about the world, and he simply daydreams. That dream is brought in here. Okay? And what is mentioned here along with hermit's dream? Visions of expiring maids. Expiring is again a controversial word used here. One is, of course, dying. When a woman dies, she has all kinds of visions. And this is again a repetition of the word visions which we had in the first canto. Visions here does not mean any kind of elevated thought. It just means glimpses of sights. Expiring also means a woman at a moment of getting a sexual pleasure, a moment of getting an orgasmic pleasure. And at that moment, she gets a lot of visions. And in Pope's writings, the stupidity of a hermit's vision and the stupidity of an expiring maid's vision, they are all same. And how is that brought in this comparison? The phantoms in the Cave of Spleen. So the phantoms means ghostly figures, you can say, which do not exist in real life. So something which is made up, of course. So those figures are there in the Cave of Spleen. The same figures which are found in a hermit's dream or an expiring maid's vision. So Pope is not just telling us that the Cave of Spleen has non-substantial figures, figures which don't exist in real life. He's also saying that hermit's dream and maid's visions are also as non-substantial. They also don't have any meanings. He gives us some other things which are there. He's talking about glaring fiends, snakes on rolling spires, pale spectres, gaping tombs, purple fires. So it's almost an infernal description. You almost have this idea of this hell there. Okay. Now lakes of liquid gold, Elysian scenes, and crystal domes and angels in machines. In opera or in contemporary opera during Pope's times, these figures of angels, they appeared on stage. And how were they brought inside the stage? By the help of the machines which used to drop them down. So here in Cave of Spleen, the angels are perpetually put on those machines. So Pope is also hitting at the opera's style, of presenting the angels on the stage. Unnumbered throngs on every side are seen of bodies changed to various forms by spleen. Now, it's also very common for epics to describe distorted creatures, creatures which are different from human beings, somehow changed from their human forms, because again, in neoclassical thought, the human form was a perfect form. They did not suffer from that romantic feeling that being human is not enough, you have to be close to nature. No. Neoclassicals thought that human shape was the perfect one. And therefore, any deviation from that shape means a kind of punishment. What kind of deviations are seen here? So, this idea is very serious. What is happening here, you see? You don't see shapes that are monstrous. You see shapes that are very, very funny. What kind of shapes? Here living teapots stand, one arm held out, one bent. The handle this and that the spout. Now imagine a teapot. Okay. How does a teapot look like? It looks like a woman who is standing with one arm on her waist and she is explaining things to somebody, pointing her fingers. That's in a very rude way. This means that when a woman is rude and when she has a mind of her own and she stands with her arms on her waist or her hips, it means that she is showing off a non-feminine trait. And this is considered to be a punishment, it's a distortion. Women should not behave in this way. So, women who come here are transformed to this kind of shape. A pipkin there like Homer's tripod walks. Pipkin is a small earthen boiler, and the Homer's tripod was something which is described in the Iliad by Homer. Those were the golden tripods that used to move around automatically on their own and served drinks to the gods. Now, throughout this canto and rather throughout this poem, we see there are countless parallels especially between Iliad and the way Belinda's world is shown. And to an initiated reader, initiated means somebody who has already read the Iliad, um, these parallels appear very prominent. Here sighs a jar and there a goose pie talks. Men prove with child as powerful fancy works. So, not just women, men also are found there. But what kind of men? Men who have the illusion that they are pregnant, which means that men who have the same kind of mood swings as pregnant women have. And maids turned bottles call aloud for cocks. That's a very, you can say, gross sexual innuendo here, hint here, which means that women are screaming there for some sexual satisfaction. They are calling aloud for cocks here. Safe past the gnome through this fantastic band. Fantastic in the sense, this band, this group of distorted people. He goes, a branch of healing spleenwort in his hand. Now, when the gnome entered this cave of spleen, he was aware that this cave might affect him too. This cave might change him too. So he wanted to secure himself and he carried some spleenwort. This we also see in case of Aeneas, who carried the golden bow when he was entering Hades, or Odysseus, okay, he carried some moly when he went to Sires. So these protective things are common conventions, and the gnome is well protected from any effect inside this cave. Then thus addressed the power, hail wayward queen. So now he addresses the spleen sitting on the throne. Hail wayward queen, who rule the sex to 50 from 15. So spleen is the ruler of women aged between 15 and 50. Hold on a second. Why is he mentioning these two, 50 and 15? What happens to women when they turn 15? What happens to women when they turn 50? Well, roughly, when you turn 15 and you're a woman, you start menstruating. You enter your sexually active state. And when you're 50, approximately, that sexually active state ceases, at least the fertile part of it ceases, because you no longer produce eggs to have any kids, and that time is called the menopause. So from menarche to menopause, from the starting of sexual activity to the end of it, this whole phase of woman, this whole range, that is from 15 to 50, here it is said that women are controlled, governed only by their hormones. That is the most sexist thing I've heard. You have heard, right? But Pope is trying to make fun of what? Us? Pope is now not just making fun of Belinda here. He is making fun of every woman who is between the age of 15 to 50, as if women's judgments, women's ideas, women's actions are all controlled only by the impulses she has, which in turn is controlled by spleen, or the queen of spleen here. Parent of vapors and of female wit. Vapor is something which is, of course, non-substantial, melancholic, something which causes depression. That is equated with female wit. Because according to Pope, well, females don't have wit. Who give the hysteric or poetic fit. Hysteric. Now this word hysteric is very interesting. If you have heard the word hysterectomy, you know that it is the surgical removal of the reproductive organs from a woman. Therefore, the word hysteria is associated with women. But what is the meaning of hysteria? Hysteria means madness, unexplained behavior, unexplained thoughts, mood swings, depression. That is hysteria. It was a common practice to mark every women mental health issue as hysteria and subsequently connect it to her body, as if her hormones, her womb was the source of her mental disbalance. Okay. And here, what is he saying? That spleen is the controlling factor for hysteria and poetic wit. So, poetry is also born out of impulses. And here, Pope is not referring to the poetry of people who are, classical poets and stuff. He's talking about those people who claim to be poets and simply write out of impulses. He didn't have any idea what was coming in the next 100 years, how the Romantics would simply establish the fact that impulse is an important element in imagination. So in Pope, we don't find any recognition or appreciation of imagination. He links it to the body, and not just to the body, to a particular organ in the body in a derogatory way, that's spleen. Okay. On various tempers act by various ways, make some take physic, some people fall sick due to spleen, others scribble plays. Now, women who write plays, probably Pope was referring to women like Afraben, she was writing during the time, or Susanna Centlever, she was another playwright of the times. Pope was not considering them as proper writers at all. This is very sad. Okay. Who cause the proud their visits to delay and send the godly in a pet to pray. So, spleen is responsible for all kinds of weird behavior in women, and weird behavior include writing plays. Okay. A nymph there is that all thy power disdains. Why does spleen disdain Belinda? Because Belinda spreads a lot of happiness around and spleen doesn't like happy people. So spleen doesn't look at Belinda in a happy way. And thousands more in equal mirth maintains. So she maintains almost 1,000 people around her in a happy mood. So Belinda is your number one enemy. But oh, if ever thy gnome could spoil a grace or raise a pimple on a beauteous face, like citron waters matron's cheeks inflame or change complexions at a losing game. Now the gnome is giving a list of the mischiefs that he is capable of doing. He is saying the whole structure is like this, that see, I am a very faithful gnome of yours and I can do this to make sure that people are tortured and to make sure that they are not happy, and therefore let me make Belinda unhappy. So this is the structure of this stanza. And how does he give his list? First is, he can raise pimple on beauteous face, and when women have pimples on their faces, they are so very nervous. Citron waters means brandy mixed with kind of citrus juice. When women, they drink this citron water, their cheeks get inflamed at times, and that is the handiwork of this gnome. Or change complexions at a losing game. If ever with airy horns I planted heads, or rumpled petticoats or tumbled beds. Now this is, it was thought that when husbands found that their wives have been unfaithful to them, they had horns grown on their heads, the husbands. And those husbands were called as cuckold husbands. Okay, they are being cuckolded or cuckolded. Now, often what this gnome did, he created situations where the husbands got suspicious of their wives. So it was not real unfaithfulness. It was something that was airy, imagined. So these horns that he planted, that was airy. Or rumpled petticoats or tumbled beds. So he used to rumple the petticoats of these women and tumble their beds. So the husbands would come home and find all these things and would say that, okay, there was a man in my house then. And then he would feel that the wife had cheated on him. Or cause suspicion when no soul was rude. So he creates these situations where this whole thing is very false. And that is because the gnome loves to play tricks. Okay, so mischievous. Or discompose the headdress of a prude, or ever to costive lapdog gave disease. Sometimes when the lapdogs, they had constipations, and these women, they felt so sad because their dogs couldn't poop, and that disease was given by the gnome. Which not the tears of brightest eyes could ease, Hear me and touch Belinda with chagrin. That single act gives half the world the spleen. So it's like a shortcut to conquer half the world. If you manage to give me some chagrin, some ill humor, some ill temper, so that I can affect Belinda, then in turn, Belinda will not be able to elevate the mood of thousands of people around her. If Belinda is sad and depressed and hysteric, then around her everybody will be gloomy, and that will be like a victory to Spleen. So the gnome is convincing Spleen to give him some hateful potion. The goddess, with a discontented air, seems to reject him. Now, because it's Spleen, she won't be showing happiness because she is Spleen. She cannot show happiness. Then she won't be Spleen. So even when she is happy about something, she cannot show her any happy face. So she appears to reject him, though she grants his prayer. A wondrous bag with both her hands she binds, like that where once Ulysses held the winds. Aeolus gave Ulysses the winds, and this is again a parallel that is drawn with that. There she collects the force of female lungs, and what does she give there inside the bag? Force of female lungs, sighs, sobs, and passions, and the war of tongues. So this is all, everything that constitutes female expression. As if women have nothing else to express other than sighs and lamentations and curses and gossip. So it is so belittling. And I'm really very disappointed with Pope. He's belittling all the women as if here. I don't know how some people still feel this is justified. Justified on the grounds that some woman felt depressed because her lock was cut. So it's okay to kind of present all women in such a bad light just to make the thing look so light that it doesn't matter. I don't find this justifiable, not reading it now in 21st century. I probably subconsciously wanted to leave off with Canto 3 because I didn't want you to be aware of so much darkness here, and there's a lot of darkness in Canto 4. And it is discouraging also, it is disheartening for us to see how Pope is generalizing women to the point of a fault here. Okay, so she gives him a bag and then she gives him a vial. It's like a test tube. A vial next she fills with fainting fears, soft sorrows, melting griefs, and flowing tears, everything that is associated with women. The gnome, rejoicing, bears her gifts away, spreads his black wings and slowly mounts to day. Almost you can visualize as if it's like the rise of Lucifer from the depths of hell as he tries to go to the paradise, to Eden and corrupt Eve. Almost the same kind of majesty it is described. But this is not majestic at all. This is so belittling. So this juxtaposition of little and majestic, this is what the Rape of the Lock has always been about. Sunk in Thalestris's arms, the nymph he found. Thalestris, Belinda's friend, she was there, and Belinda was, kind of weeping, and she was holding her. And instead of comforting her with right words, she was actually making her more angry. Her eyes dejected and her hair unbound, full over their heads, on both of their heads. What did the gnome do? Full over their heads, the swelling bag he rent. So he poured all the negative things that he had brought from the Cave of Spleen in that bag. He poured everything on the head of Thalestris and Belinda. And all the furies issued at the vent. Furies were these avengers of crime which we find in Greek mythologies, and this had an effect as if they were affected by the furies. Belinda burns with more than mortal ire. Ire means anger. And fierce Thalestris fans the rising fire. So Thalestris adds fuel to the fire. Oh, wretched maid, Thalestris is speaking now. She spreads her hands and cried, while Hampton's echoes, wretched maid, replied. So when she says wretched maid, then there's an echo from Hampton Court. And Hampton Court is a very echoing place, as it were. Was it for this you took such constant care, the bodkin, comb, and essence to prepare? Was this for this day that you had taken so much trouble to take care of your hair? This is what she's saying here. For this, your locks in paper durance bound? For this, with torturing irons wreathed around? For this, with fillets strained your tender head, and bravely bore the double loads of lead? Funny, yes, the way these preparations are described here. Preparations of making oneself decked up for someone. But at the same time, this is a real fact. This is something which she actually did. And it was not a very pleasant thing, to experience when women go and pluck their eyebrows. It's not a happy experience at all. It's torture. But why do women undergo such torture? And why women? Even men, a well-groomed man has to go through a lot of problematic steps to groom himself up. Why do people go through these things? Is it a conscious, active thing which is in their choice? Is it self-display, or is it governed by what the other person wants to see? So when you go and pluck your eyebrows, it is something which you're doing so when you go and pluck your eyebrows, are you doing that because this is what you want for yourself, or is it because somebody else wants it for you? This is a very tricky question, right? She continues, Gods, shall the ravisher display your hair? She also uses the word ravisher, okay? So will he display your hair? While the fops envy and the ladies stare, honor forbid, at whose unrivalled shrine ease, pleasure, virtue, all our sex resign. So honor is something which is at stake here. When Belinda's hair will be displayed by the Baron, everybody will talk about it and her honor will be gone. And she says that honor is like a divine entity sitting on a shrine like a god. And there are other things which are important in a woman's life, things which are inferior to honor. And what are those things? Ease, pleasure, virtue. Okay, ease and pleasure we understand. They are inferior to honor. But virtue? Virtue means good deeds. How can you separate honor from virtue? Then what honor is she talking about? She's not talking about honor as in the sense of being associated with good action or good fame because of your good actions. Honor here simply means what people think of you. That is your honor. Methinks already I your tears survey, already hear the horrid things they say, already see you a degraded toast, and all your honor in a whisper lost. Already. That means her honor is not lost the moment that hair is clipped off. Her honor will be lost when people will be talking about it. And she is so sure, Thalestris is so certain that this is going to happen, that she thinks that already her honor is lost. And what is a degraded toast? When somebody raises a toast, that is when you drink and you say, okay, to your health. Usually people drink to beautiful women's health. Okay, but when they will know what has happened to Belinda, nobody will raise a toast to her name. So she will be a degraded toast. How shall I then your helpless fame defend? How will I defend your fame in front of those people? And how can I even tell them that I'm your friend? It will then be infamy to see me your friend. Well, I can't be your friend. What kind of friend she has here? See, the artificiality of relationships, the artificiality of honor. Everything is artificial in this world, even when the sylphs are not here. Earlier we had said that okay, selves are artificial, so anybody under their influence shows artificiality. But here the selves are not there anymore. So perhaps the humans make the selves artificial. And this cave of spleen is probably not in some distant geographical location. It is right inside Belinda's head. Umbriel took a dive inside her head. Those vapors were there inside her already. So it is like a metaphoric journey. And therefore, earlier I had said that this was not the journey of the hero. This was different from the epic conventions. In epics, we have the hero journeying to the underworld. Here we have Umbriel journeying to the underworld. A different character who does not even come back to save the hero, actually to torture the hero more. Hero in this case is the heroine, the woman hero. Here, what is happening on a metaphoric level is Belinda is taking a dive inside herself and reacting depending on what is inside her. It is her own spleen which she reaches out to, and it is the effect on her that we see. Similarly, Thalestris has her own cave of spleen. But here, of course, Thalestris's words portray the kind of isolation that Belinda has at the end of the day. Even the closest friends she has, they will leave her the moment her honor is put to question. So she is not accompanied by the sylphs anymore, and here Thalestris is saying that I won't be there for you if people start talking about you in a bad light. And shall this prize, the inestimable prize, exposed through crystal to the gazing eyes, and heightened by the diamond's circling rays on that rapacious hand forever blaze? Is he planning to turn this lock into some kind of an ornament to expose to the world? And then she uses this word rays and then blaze to show as if Belinda will be exposed every time the Baron will be wearing that ring or that amulet, something which he will prepare with that lock inside it. Sooner shall grass in Hyde Park Circus grow, and wits take lodgings in the sound of bow. Sooner let earth, air, sea to chaos fall, men, monkeys, lapdogs, parrots perish all. So, everything will come to an end one day. Something strange will happen to this world. Hyde Park Circus, where there are a lot of carriages all the time and the road is dusty, no grass is there. Someday, maybe even in Hyde Park, some grass will grow. Bow means a particular church, and so far as the city of London was concerned, this Church of Bow, which was located in a mercantile area, a commercial area, where the wits didn't live. The witty people, the intellectuals, they lived on the other side of the city. And Thalestris is saying that maybe in some future, when there will be grass growing on the Hyde Park circus ring, and the witty people will start living on the commercial zones of London. So she's talking about an indefinite futurity, when it's something which will happen in in the distant future. And then what will happen then? Maybe this earth will cease to exist, earth, air, sea to chaos. She's talking about all great things. Then she's saying, men, monkeys, lapdogs, parrots perish all. What are the words she's choosing here? Men, monkeys, lapdogs, parrots. Okay, monkeys, lapdogs, parrots, they are often taken up as pets by women. Yes, even monkeys. It was a fashionable thing to have a pet monkey, especially because it had some oriental air about it. Men are not pets of women. Men are not controlled by women, not trained by women, are they not? So he is putting in these words in a random way, and Thalestris's priorities are, well, mixed up, and she looks pretty chaotic in the way she is using words here. And then what she does, she said, then raging to Sir Plume repairs. Now she goes off to this person, Sir Plume, who is probably the fourth player. Like when they were sitting down at the card table, Belinda, the Brabourne, Thalestris and Sir Plume. They were the four players, and Thalestris was the silent player because Belinda was Umber, so she played alone. And Sir Plume was probably partners with the Brabourne. So two adventurous knights were the Brabourne and Sir Plume. Now Pope based this character on one of Arabella Fermor's mother's cousins, and his name was Sir George Brown. Now Sir George Brown, he got very offended by the way he's presented here. So let's just see how he is presented. He is presented as Thalestris' boyfriend, Beau. She said, then raging to Sir Plume repairs and bids her Beau demand the precious hairs. She asks Sir Plume to go and get those hairs back. Now, plume means a colorful feather. So, of course, when somebody's name is Sir Plume, he is definitely very fashionable and at the same time very vain, not very substantial, light, airy. Okay, let's see how he is. Sir Plume. Now, Pope puts this whole thing within parentheses, brackets. Sir Plume of amber snuff box justly vain, and the nice conduct of a clouded cane. Plume is associated with Sir Plume two things. One is a snuff box and one is a cane. Taking snuff was a very conventional habit for fashionable 18th century people of London, and Sir Plume also carried a very decorative snuff box, and he also carried a cane. Now, people often, again fashionable people, they used to keep a cane with them, which they used to flip and swing in a very stylish way, and depending on how capable you are of flinging and swinging your cane, you were considered to be a fashionable person. So, Sir Plume is, you can say, on one end of a spectrum. On the other end of the spectrum, we have Belinda. So, Pope is not just making fun of women here, he is also making fun of men who prioritize appearances. So, Sir Plume is asked to go and charge the Brabourne, demand the lock back with earnest eyes and round unthinking face. Unthinking face. So, Plume doesn't have much wit in him. Of course, like he saw the whole thing in front of his eyes. He should have immediately tried to stop the Brabourne or admonished him after it. Okay, it was Thalestris who had to tell him that please do something about it, after which he realizes that okay, I think I should go and ask this person to give the hair back. He first the snuff box opened, then the case. Now this is a very classic example of zeugma. First he opened the snuff box, this is a literal opening we're talking about, and then he opened the case. Case means argument. So in the first case, like there's only one verb used, opened, which is connecting these two nouns, snuff box and case. Snuff box is a literal thing, like a real thing, the snuff box, he opens it. And when we say he opens a case, it's a metaphoric opening, like you start an argument. So Pope is using a witty thing here. And thus broke out. So Pope is giving us a preparation. Okay, he's preparing us to expect a speech from Sir Plume. Great speech because he is Sir Plume. And what does he say? My lord, why? What the devil? Zoom, damn the lock. You must be civil. Plague on it. Just past a jest. Nay, prithee, box. Give her the hair. He spoke and rapped his box. So he opened his snuff box, tried to give a speech, ended up pouring out some jumbled expressions, curse words at times, fashionable curse words, not real curse words. And then he just gives one statement, give her here. And then he stops speaking with the same movement as he shuts down his snuff box. So this whole figure is not just comic, it is simply detestable. I mean, what kind of person are you? And that made the real person, Sir George Brown, very, very angry with Pope. He said, how have you presented me? Okay, anybody would get a bit displeased by this kind of presentation. Anyway, what does the Brabourne reply to it? That Brabourne, in contrast, has a much more refined capability of speaking. He is a better speaker, a more articulate speaker, more cultured speaker. Let's see what he says. It grieves me much, replied the peer again, who speaks so well should ever speak in vain. Now, he says that, oh, Sir Plume, you are an excellent speaker. I feel bad that such an excellent speaker is speaking in vain, fruitlessly, because I am not going to listen to you. So he calls Sir Plume an excellent speaker only to make fun of him. He is not an excellent speaker at all. But by this lock, so he is now showing that lock to them. By this lock, this sacred lock, I swear, which never more shall join its parted hair. I'm not going to give it back. And in any case, it's not going to get attached to the hair again. Which never more its honors shall renew, clipped from the lovely head where late it grew, that while my nostrils draw the vital air, so while I'm alive, this hand which won it shall forever wear. I'm going to wear this, maybe as a ring, maybe as an amulet, anything. He spoke, and speaking in proud triumph spread the long contended honors of her head. So he's kind of displaying it as a fan now, spreading. Now this word spread, this also has a sexual innuendo about it. We have a lot of repetitions of this particular word here. Umbriel is still there. And remember, he was carrying not just a bag, but also a test tube, a vial. But Umbriel, hateful gnome. Now, Umbriel, the word itself, it means shade, in Latin. So, of course, there is something evil about the name itself. So, what does he do now? Forbears not so. He breaks the vial whence the sorrows flow. Second vial was filled with sorrows. Then see, the nymph in beauteous grief appears, her eyes half languishing, half drowned in tears. So, up to this point, Belinda was angry. Now she is sad. Mood swings make people behave in this way. One moment you're angry, the next moment you're sad. And somehow Pope, in making fun of mental ailments, shows that he is not capable of understanding women, and he claims to have a good understanding of women. So she's having basically a mood swing here. She's feeling depressed. On her heaved bosom hung her drooping head. So all these words, drooping, languishing, half drowned, they give off this air of melancholia, which with a sigh she raised, and thus she said, now the speech of Belinda. Have we ever heard her speak till now? I mean, yes, let spades be trumps. That was the only time she spoke so far. And maybe some random words here and then. Pope makes us wait for a pretty long time, almost 4 cantos, before he makes us hear what Belinda has to say. So this is Belinda speaking to us, and what does she say? Forever cursed be this detested day. Of course, this is a day which she's going to hate forever. It's going to be a forever cursed day for her, which snatched my best, my favorite curl away. Happy, 10 times happy had I been if Hampton Court these eyes had never seen. This happens, when something bad happens, you say that, oh, I wish I never came here. I never did this. And she's doing that same thing here. Yet, am I not the first mistaken maid by love of courts to numerous ills betrayed? Oh, had I rather unadmired remained in some lone isle or distant northern land, if I had chosen to live away from all this, away from parties, away from boys, then this wouldn't have happened. So she's saying all that thing. Where the gilt chariot never marks the way, where none learn ombre, none ever taste bohe. So bohe is a kind of herbal tea, Not real tea, not even green tea. It's a different kind of a tea, some astringent tea perhaps. She is mentioning these words, amber, bohe, and chariot. She is talking about going away from all that, and then she is brooding over these things. So, on one hand, these things constitute her life. She knows only about these things. She doesn't know about some place where these things don't exist. But she says, I wish I had been in a different place. There, kept my charms concealed from mortal eye. If I had been away, then I could have kept myself hidden from men. Like roses that in deserts bloom and die. What moved my mind with youthful lords to roam? Why did I come here? This is her reaction. Oh, had I stayed and said my prayers at home. A common thing, people tell women, you should stay at home and pray and not go about taking risks, venturing out. But Belinda is a person who wears a cross as an ornament. She is a person who keeps her Bible on the dressing table. Alongside, she keeps the love letters and puffs and powders. Do you think she would have actually stayed home and prayed? Does prayer mean really important to him? If it had meant so, she wouldn't have kept the Bible with the belittles, right? It was this. The morning omens seemed to tell. Now she is getting some recollections, Yes, something happened this morning. I had a dream, and then my dog behaved in a different way. My parrot behaved in a different way. So now she is trying to connect the dots. This happens, something bad happens, and we try to justify it somehow by connecting probably unrelated incidents as this has led to this. So this is our natural tendency. And what are the things she's talking about? It was this the morning omens seemed to tell. Thrice from my trembling hand the patchbox fell. So she's talking about omens. Omens means something which will tell you about something bad or good that's going to happen in the future. So omen is something serious. It has a metaphysical value. And what is she associating with these omens? She is talking about patchbox falling, makeup box. Okay, that falling of makeup box as an omen for her. The tottering china shook without a wind. Nay, Paul sat mute. Paul is the pet parrot she had. Didn't speak today. And shock was most unkind. Maybe the dog gave her small little bite or scratch in the morning when he leapt up, remember, to wake her up. So shock was most unkind. A sylph too warned me of the threats of fate in mystic visions, now believed too late. See the poor remnants of these slighted hairs. Now she turns her attention to the remaining lock of hair. She is saying it's the sad remnant, what remains of what is gone. My hands shall rend what even thy rapine spares. She gets so angry. She wants to snip off the other lock just to make it symmetrical or in a self-destructive, suicidal way that, okay, I'm going to rip my other end off like that kind of an anger here. These into sable ringlets taught to break. I used to make them symmetrical, and sable means dark. Okay, so she dyed them in a way to make them look glamorous and glorious. Once gave new beauties to the snowy neck, the sister lock. The two locks were sisters of each other. So this lock is gone, that lock is there. That lock is now very depressed because the sister lock is gone. The sister lock now sits uncouth alone, and in its fellow's fate, fellow means the other lock, foresees its own. So this lock is thinking about the other lock and thinking that, okay, that lock is gone, so I will be also gone someday. Such trivial nonsense and such elevated use of poetic images. This juxtaposition has this poem been about. Uncurled it hangs, the fatal shears demands. So my other lock, which is not cut, is demanding to be cut because it's unbearable for that lock to remain alone. And tempts once more thy sacrilegious hands. I'm asking you to do the same thing to the other lock. Or hadst thou, cruel, been content to seize hairs less in sight, or any hairs but these? These two lines were first ascribed in the first version to Thalestris. It was Thalestris's portion. She had said that, oh, had the youth been content to seize hairs less in sight, and etc. Pope, in the revised version, what he did, he makes Belinda say these things. Now, when Belinda says, first she is saying that the other lock is demanding to be cut. Okay. And then she says, I wish you had cut or you had seized hairs less in sight, any hairs but these. Now, apparently, if you give a plain reading, the simple meaning is that she is specifically fond of the two locks which she created artificially, in a ringlet fashion. But when you look at these two lines from a different perspective, she's talking about hairs less in sight. What kind of hairs? Like pubic hairs? So she feels that it would have been okay if the Brabourne had actually ravished her sexually, then snip off her lock because she can hide in front of people the fact that the Brabourne had seized her less visible hairs. But now she can't hide from people the fact that the Brabourne has cut off her hair. So in this world of mixed values, of toppled values, artificial appearance is given priority over what is real, what is actually, chastity, honor, those things. Again, her expression is also very confusing. What she is actually doing here, you see. Why did Ariel go away from her? Because Ariel saw that Belinda had fancied a youth. She wanted to be with a man. Okay, so her thoughts were not virgin anymore. And when we read these lines, which Belinda actually says, we see that she is asking for it somehow, asking for a kind of sexual relationship in a way, showing that she is available. Earlier, when Thalestris was talking about the different kinds of rituals that she undertakes to please men, this was also the tone saying that you asked for it. You were displaying your lock. No wonder it was cut off. And now she is saying that I would have been okay if he would have abused me, attacked me, ravished me in a different way than take away an object that adds to my so-called beauty. You can dismiss Belinda as an artificial woman. You can dismiss her as a woman who has no idea about priorities, no sense of judgment, morality, ethics, nothing. She is a shallow woman, right? You can dismiss her like that. But isn't she a woman who is also struggling with the problem of expression? Because expression in women is considered to be unwomanly, unfeminine. Women are supposed to lisp and stammer a bit in a fashionable, in a coy manner. They are not supposed to express their desires. They are not supposed to tell a man that I wish you had me in a different way. So this is the best she can do. Fighting the conditions in which she has to live. She's negotiating with these choices she has to make. The choices are simple. You have to beautify yourself. You cannot show your desire. You cannot show your emotions. You cannot show your moods. Because the moment you show your mood, you will be branded as unfeminine and hysteric. Pope is making fun of Belinda. Yes, he's making fun of all women here, even men here. But more women, yes. But at the same time, there are moments like this when Belinda is probably rising above what her position forces her to be. Moments where she undertakes to win a game of Umber on her own, becomes a powerful character, becomes even unfeminine when she screams with joy and shrieks with pain. So Belinda both confirms to and challenges the codes of femininity that ruled the conventions of 18th century society, ideas about women, and ideas about the way in which women should behave. So Canto 4 is a darker one compared to the first one, second one especially. We do feel the absence of the sylphs here, we miss them. And Umbriel is such a dark replacement of Ariel. So that's it for today, and we will be meeting each other with Canto 5 next week. I wish you have enjoyed today's class. Please write down in the comment section anything that comes to your mind. There are expressions which I should have dwelt on for longer, but I have to also keep in mind the length of the video, don't I? So if you have any questions, ask them in the comment section. I will definitely come back and reply. Thank you once again for being with us. So till our next video, all of you, stay happy, stay subscribed. This is Monami Mukherjee signing off. Bye-bye.